Hi, my name is Jacob. I'm dressed up, firstly, because you're statistically more likely to believe what I'm saying. Secondly, it's my video, and it's not as fun if I don't get to dress up. Today we're talking about nicotine. It's bad. But why, and how did we discover that? As with most bad things, it started with Christopher Columbus. On October 12th, 1492, Chris landed in the island of Guanahani in the Bahamas, also known as India. He was greeted by the friendly Taino people who gave him gifts of welcome, including fruits, spears, and dried up leaves, which Columbus quickly threw them away. In November, Columbus instructed sailor Rodrigo de Lleras and interpreter Louis de Torres to locate the east coast of Asia to locate the Great Khan. They would go on to arrive in Cuba. Rodrigo would observe local inhabitants of the island smoking the very same dried leaves. Rodrigo caught on. When he came back to his home in Spain, he would blow air out of his mouth to scare his neighbors, and then he got the Spanish Inquisition to arrest him for 7 years because only the devil could give a man the power to exhale smoke from his mouth. By the time de Lleras was released from prison, smoking was popular all throughout Spain, and had even spread to France through Jean Nicot, who gave it to King Francis II, curing his chronic headaches. He would later die at 17. They named the plant Nicotiana after him, but also tobacco. It was celebrated for its health benefits and said to, quote, openeth all the pores and passages of the body. Soon enough, smoking was one of North America's greatest exports. Young tobacco farmers that weren't chain smokers were starting to notice something: burns on their skin. They also observed insects dying when eating the crop, and soon enough, tobacco was discovered as a pesticide, and even prescribed to kill lice and stomach worms, as reported so eloquently by the English physician Nicholas Culpeper. He was a chain smoker. People are starting to get suspicious of Nicotiana, which seems to kill everything except humans. Foreshadowing. Soon, German scientists Wilhelm Heinrich Holset and Karl Ludwig Riemann are able to extract a compound nicotine as a potent poison. Adolf Pinner successfully mapped the structure of nicotine in 1893. So I guess now we have this poison thing sorted out, right guys? Wrong. In the meantime, James Albert Bonsack invented the first automatic cigarette roller in 1881. James Buchanan Duke would go on to use this machine to create a monopoly of cigarettes in America by investing heavily in marketing. Cigarettes were included in every set of military rations during both World Wars. General Pershing from the First World War would go on to say, "You ask me what we need to win this war. I answer tobacco as much as bullets." By the end of the Second, a little over half of American men were smokers, despite the fact even the Nazis knew smoking caused cancer. And they're the bad guys. Cigarettes were taken out of US military rations in the 70s, but that was a little late. Still, in 1994, tobacco CEOs of 7 companies, or colloquially known as the Seven Dwarfs, all swore under oath that nicotine is not addictive.
Please consider yourself to be under oath.
We just would like to have this for the record.
I don't believe that nicotine or our products are addictive.
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
One of them also said this.
It's true. The babies born from women who smoke are smaller, but they're just as healthy as the babies born from women who do not smoke.
What about the higher
And
rate
some
of
women would
deaths?
prefer having smaller babies.
Soon enough, people realized that tobacco was evil, and the government started regulating tobacco products, so naturally, we just started putting pure nicotine in cartridges instead. Now, nicotine was marketed to the youth, which I'm sure some of you are very aware of. Understandably, this just made people more angry, so now we just have pure nicotine in little tea bags. In the modern day, nicotine policy is largely a war between those who are suspicious of its purported safety and policymakers who themselves are addicted.
Senator Chuck Schumer says the product targets teens through social media. He is calling on the feds to investigate Zyns marketing and to assess the impact on kids due to the absence of tobacco.
It's the future. I use it, every second I'm awake and in bed. I'm not embarrassed of it. I've never had one of my dogs eat a Zyn pouch, though I'm not against it, because I think they would like it. But I think the hostility to nicotine is really telling. I mean, obviously, cigarette smoking can be bad for you. It's not bad for everybody.
So what is going on? Why do farmers get rashes from tobacco? Why do bugs die from it? Does it have any health benefits? Can I eat cigarettes? Why is it so addictive? Why does it make my teeth yellow? And are the 7 multimillionaires with a profit incentive lying to us? I'll just get Michael to explain. Let's look here. Okay. Nicotine chemistry search. This one's oddly specific.
In today's video, we are going to talk about nicotine and its combustion. First, we must define what is the IUPAC name for nicotine. It is 3,2,S,1-methyl-pyridine 2-ill, bracket close, pyridine. First, we're going to define what is this pyridine group. This is going to look like a benzene, so a hexagonal cyclical hydrocarbon. However, we're going to replace what would usually be one of the carbon groups with a nitrogen here. It's going to have the same shape as benzene. Now we have to talk about what are the properties of this. So this is going to be water soluble, polar because of this nitrogen. It's going to be highly flammable and toxic. It's going to be colorless in its pure state. However, because we're going to be adding this substituent group, it is going to be yellow because it's impure, and it's going to have a fishy odor. So from here, we have this 2s part. So we're going to count from 1, 2 to the third carbon, and this 2s indicates a stereoisomer. Specifically, this indicates that this substituent group is going to be behind the main chain, which we're going to indicate like this. So off of this third one, we are going to draw a pyrrolidine. Methylpyrrolidine is a pentane that has one of its carbons replaced by a nitrogen. And off of this nitrogen, this is going to be the second here, which is why we get this ill ending, because it is a substituent group of the main chain. But specifically, off the first one, which we're going to number starting from the nitrogen, we're going to have a methyl group. And this, because of the nitrogen, again, is going to be soluble in water and polar. It's going to be colorless, and it's going to be highly flammable and have the smell of ammonia. So what happens when we combine these two molecules together? Well, what happens is we have two separate molecules that are both flammable, which means we can easily do a combustion reaction with them. On top of that, they are both highly toxic, so this entire molecule will become extremely dangerous for consumption. It could easily kill an adult person with just a small amount of ingestion, around 500 milligrams. And because of the contamination of this part, the pyridine, we will end up with a molecule that has an overall ammonia or fish-like odor, and which causes a yellow coloration to things that come into contact with it, such as the teeth of a smoker. From this, we can also tell that since this is flammable, we can do a combustion reaction, and let's see what the products of that would be. We would predict a incomplete combustion, as most cigarettes, when we're burning a compound like this, would produce an incomplete combustion. So we already know we would have CO2 gas, carbon monoxide, soot, and water vapor. But on top of this, this nitrogen is going to break off and react with the oxygen to produce nitrogen dioxide. Same with this one. And then we also have the potential of producing a bipyridine group, which is often used in the production of herbicides, which would look like two benzenes connected together. However, both of these would have a nitrogen replacing one of their carbons. That's all for the video. Thank you for watching.
Why is it bad, though? To respectfully and accurately portray the subject matter at hand, we made sure to reach out to an expert for his opinion. it's Michael again.
So now we want to understand, why is nicotine even bad in the first place? First, to understand that, we have to understand a little bit about the chemistry of the brain. One of the main things we have to know is that there are these chemicals called acetylcholines. They're an ester of acetic acid, or ethanoic acid, and choline. And essentially, these molecules are used by our brain in order to regulate our emotions, give us motivation, and other such things. It usually results in the release of dopamine, the pleasure-seeking chemical, into the brain. Now, the problem is that nicotine can mimic the properties of acetylcholines. So when it's going to the acetylcholine receptors in our brain, which are polypeptides to which the acetylcholine is supposed to bond with, instead the nicotine will bond with this and it'll cause a release of dopamine. So not only do we have a toxin bonding to part of our brains, but it's also causing the release of dopamine, which reinforces this behavior as something that the brain thinks it needs. Over time, as more nicotine bonds to these receptors will start to be filled. And in this process, we will become desensitized. So our brain will create more pathways, and thus every time we use nicotine, we need more and more to get the same high off of it. Therefore, we create a dependency, and we have to continue ingesting this toxin in order to feel like we survive, lest we encounter the incredible pains of quitting or relapsing.
Thanks, Michael. That was really educational.
Dr. Mike out.
So I know what you're thinking. If there was a God, why would he make something so awful and so evil and so wretched? Well, nicotine itself is maybe not that bad. It's just every method associated with taking nicotine. So in the case of smoking, you fill your lungs with tar. In the case of vaping, you inhale microplastics. In the case of Zins, your gums are just going to recede and your teeth are going to fall out and nobody's going to like you and then you're going to die. And it turns out that the level of dependence people feel is actually correlated with how quickly the nicotine enters your system. The safest method is to have it be absorbed through the skin, which is why you see people recovering from these addictions with a nicotine patch. This is significant because it means that nicotine is still useful. We can still prescribe nicotine when we're helping people recover from these addictions, when we're trying to get someone to downgrade from smoking to a nicotine patch, which is going to have less of a harmful effect on their life. So nicotine fits into these pre-existing neural pathways, but it's not cheating in any way. There's no right or wrong way to use these pathways. There's just one that evolution intended. So it still has all of the good benefits that the receptors are expecting to give to acetylcholine. So you still get that dopamine, and you also get enhanced memory, wakefulness, cognition, concentration. It might help to prevent Alzheimer's. It reduces inflammation. And it's even potentially shown to induce the growth of new blood vessels. As for the toxicity of nicotine, it's really not something you should worry about unless you're someone who will break open a vape and drink the fluid inside, which is generally not a good idea. A dose that will kill an insect or paralyze a baby will not harm me, anybody, because the relative effect on you will be much smaller. In many ways, nicotine is pretty much equivalent to caffeine in the sense that it's a recreational sort of drug we take on an everyday basis, which itself is not that harmful, but it's paired with worse things. No judging, because we each have our own vices.